Hey, let's briefly discuss webcams and microphones. I'm working on a laptop that I've been working on through some of these videos, and I do have it opened up, so you want to make sure you have your anti-static protection, your ESD protection. And in a previous video, I took off the bezel here, and underneath the bezel, you'll find the webcam, which has the built-in microphones. And so here's the actual camera, and then this one I think has two microphones, one here and one here, so stereo microphones, and it's on a very small circuit board which plugs in right here. So when you're troubleshooting a webcam and it's not working and you don't think it's a software problem, then you could open it up and take a look and see if it's connected. Usually these connectors don't come loose, but you never know what the case may be, especially if you're doing repairs. So may need to plug this guy back in. Okay, but this is connected right now, and you can see the wire is actually routed all the way down here and through here and underneath. And by the way, you might also notice, I don't know if you can read this, but this says CA main and CA aux. These are the antenna leads that came from our M.2 card, our Wi-Fi/Bluetooth card, which routes all the way underneath here. The card is somewhere in this area here underneath, and it routes through here, through the hinge, up here and around and up to here to get us some length on those antennas to try and keep the antenna on the top of the display so we can get better access. That's the way you want to route those, if at all possible. But we're talking about the webcam here, and if you ever need to replace a webcam, or perhaps for security purposes remove the webcam, you'll have to get that bezel off, and then you'll have to remove the screen, the display. I've already unscrewed the 4 screws for this, so we can just lift that out carefully. Place that down on a soft surface. Dry, lint-free cloth. Right now I'm using a paper towel, but that's whatever. This is my test laptop. A dry, lint-free cloth would be the best if you have it. And then you'll see here, now we have this connector, and sometimes these connectors can be a little bit tough to get out. It's this white connector comes out here, and sometimes you'll have to pry it, and you might have to pry it from both sides with some type of prying tool, and loosen it out a little bit. There we go. Until you can get it out. Now I just use metal, and that's kind of a no-no. It's better to use plastic if at all possible, because we do have a circuit board here. But always remember, before working on a laptop, always power it down, take the battery out, discharge with the power button, use the SD protection, and so on. So you can minimize the risk of damaging anything here. But just be careful taking that connector out, because they could be kind of flimsy sometimes, those little connectors. And again, if sometimes this might get a little bit loose, so that's something you can just reseat in there and see if it works. Now, if you need to replace this, in some cases, once in a while you'll see these screwed in, but generally you won't. Sometimes they'll just lift right out, and sometimes they'll be taped on, and that's the case here. This one's actually taped in there. It's got sticky tape under here. And if you wanted to replace it, you'd have to remove all this tape, which goes all the way underneath, and then pull the whole unit out. I'm not going to replace that right now, but that's how you do it. And if you got a replacement unit, you'd need to make sure it comes with some type of tape so it'll stay in place. You could lay it in there and hope that it stays and hope that the bezel keeps it in there, but the two-sided tape can be very helpful, and they designed this specifically for the webcam. So you'd have to remove this tape. It goes all the way underneath, take the whole unit out, and take the new tape and assembly and webcam, put that in carefully. And what I like to do is I like to mark it with a pencil or something, so I know exactly where that tape was and where that webcam was supposed to go. So removal is pretty easy once you get that tape off, if you do have to remove it or if you have to take it out for security purposes. Then get that tape flattened in there, put the display back on, put the bezel back on, and you'll be in business. Just make sure that you, of course, connect that power cable back in there, that signal cable, because this takes care of the webcam and the audio. And when you reconnect these, sometimes they don't go in all the way on the first shot. So you have to make sure they are tight in there. I'm just using a little opening tool to press that in there more. Make sure that connection is good. And I mean, that's pretty much it. You know, I think everybody that's watching this understands what a webcam does and why we use it. We use it for communication purposes or for recording purposes. And a lot of laptops come with webcams that can record as much as 720p, perhaps higher. And again, have those stereo microphones so you can get some decent audio. Now, a couple things you want to check for, and I have my other similar laptop running. Whenever you are working with a webcam, if you install a new one, you want to try to use the right type, first of all. But then once you install it, you want to check in your device manager and check the cameras section and make sure that it sees it as what it's supposed to be. And if it shows up in the other devices section or something like that, you want to make sure to install the driver for it. So for this one, it's Shiba web camera and HD. Okay, and then you can test that by going to the built-in Windows 10 camera app. And if you bring that up, it should automatically run that camera. And this is running at 720p right here. And you just see a bunch of my gear. You can take pictures, you can record. You can use this for communication. You can use it for webinars or for Skype or FaceTime or whatever. So you have a lot of options here. So this webcam is working properly on this other system, and we've tested that very basically with the camera app. Now, as I mentioned, the webcam also has the microphones. And in some cases, you may have you may not want to use those. You may want to use another microphone, say one that you plugged in through USB or something like that, like a Rode Podcaster or something like that. So you can modify what microphone you're using, and you can do that in a control panel. Now, right now I'm in category view. I like to go to large or small icons, and you want to go to the sound option. If you're in category view, then you go to hardware and sound and dig down from there. But the exam and really in the field, they both want you to know, you really want to know the icons mode as well, so you can go directly to what you want. So in this case, it would be sound. I'll bring that up. That brings up the sound dialog box. And you can modify the playback options, meaning what speakers you'll be using. By default, we're just using the built-in Harman Kardon speakers, but you can also modify the recording, and in this case, the microphone. So here we have the built-in microphone for the webcam, and there's two of them, two high-definition audio microphones. But again, it could be that you have something plugged in to USB, so you'd have to select that from this list and set that as the default device. And then that would be check marked. So you always want to check that. And you can see as I'm talking, the levels are showing up. So we know that our audio is working. So this is a good way to test whether your webcam's microphones are actually functioning. So after you do any install, if you do a replacement or an install of a new webcam and microphones, then you're going to want to go in there and check that. Check it in the device manager. Check it with the camera app, and check it with the sound properties. All right, so at this point, what I'm going to do, because I don't think I'm going to be working inside the laptop anymore, I'm going to put this laptop back together, and we'll install, actually I already have Linux on here. I think I'm going to install the latest version of Ubuntu Linux and see how it runs in comparison to Windows 10 that we had running very sluggishly on it before. So to do that, we want to take a look here, make sure that everything's connected properly. We want to make sure that our wires are routed properly, our webcam is connected. This one's actually coming loose from the tape a little bit, but I think the bezel will hold that down once we get it in. Okay, we'll put our display back on here and lay that in place. There we go. And this has 4 screws. And one goes here. Screws into the chassis inside of the display top here. And I'll put the rest of those screws in. Okay, that's 2. And we'll get the other 2 in, then we'll do the bezel. Now we're going to start snapping the bezel back in. I like to start with the hinges. Get them snapped in. You can probably hear that. And you want to get a corner going first. Once you get that primary snap, then you can start snapping down the way to get the rest of it in place. And that's the important part right there. We want to make sure that the webcam, see a little damage to the plastic cover over the webcam. That might have to come out. But I want to make sure that this stays in place and that the webcam is, the actual camera is right there. If it's not in line perfectly, then the microphones will be covered up. So that's another issue with that. So it becomes very important when you change one out, which isn't that often, but so we'll keep working around each snap along the way. Sometimes you have to kind of compress it a little bit to get it snapped into place. Okay, and so it's snapped in. For the most part, looks like we have a little gap right here. There it goes. So we want to make sure there's no gaps. And at one point, somewhere in the bezel, it's going to compress, and it's going to look like it's bending a little bit. There's going to be some curvature there, but that's normal. You have to just get it all snapped into place. And you want to make sure the hinge covers are snapped into place also, and then test it, close it, reopen, make sure it opens okay, and we should be in good shape. Okay, and then we need to put our 2 screws back in, and there's one on each side. Okay, so we'll screw that in. And the other one. And when you're doing repairs, if you work on a bench, you'll probably have lots of these screw covers, these little tabs. If not, you can order them and place those back in. That one's slightly damaged, actually. I don't know if I did that today or another day, but this one's pretty nice. So I'll probably swap that out later. You place those covers back in just so it looks nice, but I like to put new ones on. I don't quite know where my new ones are. I have a bunch of them for Toshiba, but put some new ones on every time you do some work so it looks nice. Okay, and so we have our bezel back on here, and everything looks good. We'll close that up, and we had the bottom cover off as well because we were showing all kinds of stuff inside of here. This is the non-upgraded laptop. The other one I was working on, I upgraded the RAM and the hard drive and so on, which you never know. I might do with this as well, just get a cheap SSD somewhere just to make it run faster. But we'll put that back on, and there's a whole ton of screws to reconnect all this. This kind of does a lot of snapping into place. I'll make sure it's all snapped in all the way around. Because there's these tabs here, all around it that grab on to that bottom cover. So it's got to be all snapped into place. You can check all the way around. You can see what I mean. I don't like to do this until everything's up and running. But I'm just showing you how it works. And then we screw everything in. We got lots of screws to put in here. Right? And there's about a dozen of these that hold into place. And when you're done, you can put your battery in. And this battery actually has 2 screws as well. And they go here and here. But I'm going to leave the rest of the screws out for now, just in case there's any issues with the laptop, because I'm going to go and install a new OS to it now, and we'll take a look when it's done. Okay, so it took about 12 minutes. I created a boot USB drive using Rufus and copied over the Ubuntu version 17 ISO to this, and plugged that in, installed it onto this system, and all told took about 10-12 minutes. So it looks like it's installed good, and you can see it here running Firefox, and it's much more efficient, runs a lot better than Windows 10 was. And the Windows 10 that I had running on this was actually that was a fresh install that I had done on this, and I did it on both laptops at the same time just to see the difference between the SSD that I upgraded on the one and the original drive on this one. So Windows 10 was just atrociously slow on this device, which is a Core i5 with 6 gigabytes of RAM, DDR3. But you can see here Linux runs, and it also runs well. So that install is complete, and I just wanted to kind of wrap up everything because it was doing a lot inside this laptop. It's all put back together now, though, and running good with Linux. And so that's about it for this video.